Hi everyone, it's Tom Mackie. I've just finished a workshop here in Scotland, and we had a great mixture of weather. Started out with some beautiful still conditions with gorgeous light, which I'll show you some of those shots at the end of this video. And then unfortunately it did turn into quite stormy weather, which is usual for Scotland. But what do you do on those days when you don't have the light? So I like to come into the glens. So I've come into one of my favorite places in Scotland, and I'm not going to tell you where it is. I want to keep it my favorite place. Just see if you can guess. If you've ever been to this place, it is fantastic for autumn colors, and because you have a lot of beech trees, silver birch, oaks, so there's a nice variety of color here. Even when right now I'm photographing after the workshop, when we were here we had some gorgeous colors, but a lot of the leaves have dropped in that storm. It's still fantastic to photograph here, as you'll see later on in the video. I'm going to take you to some really nice waterfalls. Now this is one of my favorites here, just along the river, and I'm going to do a few shots of this, but it's really nice. I like the moss covered trees coming in off the over the waterfall, but there's just the right amount of water here. Now, I've been coming to this spot since the 80s. I used to have holidays up here, so I've seen it throughout the seasons. It's a fantastic place, but the nice thing is right now it's overcast, and it's ideal for photographing woodlands. So let's go ahead and see if I can do a few shots of this. I hope you can hear me over the water here, but I've fitted the D850 with a 24 to 70 mm lens. I'm zooming in fairly tight on the waterfall, and I'm using this V-shaped tree as a frame on the left-hand side of the frame. Now I've fitted this with a polarizing filter, because even in dull overcast conditions like this, it tends to take the reflection off the rocks, it saturates the colors, so it really improves shots like this. It'll make the water stand out and control those highlights. So what we're going to do here is probably an exposure of a second to a few seconds, just to get a little bit of flow, but we don't want to burn out those highlights. So let's go ahead and move over here. Okay, so I'm shooting at f9 and it's about 3 seconds. Let's just see how that looks with the highlights. Now I can underexpose this to make sure I don't blow out the highlights. Now those highlights do look a little hot. Yes, the histogram is just pushing over to the right-hand side, so I'm going to underexpose this. By about 2/3 of a stop. That's about 2 seconds. That's much better. Histogram's pulled back a lot. Okay. Now there is one really important thing that you've got to remember when you're photographing in woodlands. You can see in the top of the frame there's a lot of light areas coming into the frame. You want to omit those because your eye is going to be drawn up to those light areas. So I usually zoom in and do a really tight crop. If I have any that are still coming into the frame, I can easily clone those out later. Now, time's wasting, so it's getting dark here. Now I generally come here probably around midday, mainly because the sun is still quite high. If the sun does come out, you can get those really nice sunbursts through the autumn trees. And there's a couple of shots at the back, or at the end of this video, that I'll show you that where we actually got this on the workshop. But let's go ahead. I want to show you a few more shots or locations where we'll do some more images. So let's get going. Now you can see here there's a lovely carpet of leaves that have dropped, but it creates a beautiful carpet of color in, against the mossy trees. Now there's some really lovely tree roots. If you come over here, So I think this makes a great pattern. Just the mossy green against these brown leaves, and copper-colored leaves. But it's just this pattern of the trunk going through the leaves attracted my attention. So I'm going to do a few detail shots of that. Okay, so I'm zooming in really tight on this. So I'm using this pattern leading up to the base of the trunk. And I'll just polarize this so it'll really saturate those colors. Okay, we got 5 seconds, F11. Nice, I like that. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So I really love the leaves on all the rocks here and the water spilling down. So let's go ahead and do a few exposures here. Oh, that looks fantastic. Now, I know it's getting dark, but it really doesn't matter when you've got this nice, soft, overcast light. I can just increase my exposures. If I'm doing a waterfall like this where there's maybe too much highlights that might burn out, then what you can do is increase your ISO, shorten the exposure time so that you're not blowing those highlights out. Always paying attention to your histogram. That's better. So now I've increased my ISO up to 400, and that's shortened the exposure down to 1 second, which is just perfect to bring that histogram back in line. I'm going to do one where I'm just concentrating on the spill here and not so much on this really white area over here. Now, if you're ever in doubt about where to place the tripod when you're doing this, just take your camera off the tripod and take it right out of the way, and then just move around until you find that perfect position, and then set up your tripod there. Okay, that's what I want. I want this corner of the leaves to bring your eye in here, fill this foreground in. And I think what I might do is just throw a few more leaves right in there. Fill up that hole, dress the shot. There we go. Okay, let's do another one. That's better. That's much better. Now, I've just got that really nice diagonal going through the frame. And the water, it's just nice and silky, just the way I like it. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. We've got lots more to do. Now, here's just a wee little hint as to where I am. Any guesses yet? Now, this is one of my favorite spots along the river here. I just love this moss-covered tree on the left and the autumn leaves in the background. Now, a lot of the leaves have come down already, but I'll show you an image that I prepared earlier during the workshop. So let's go ahead and just gonna fire one off here. I just want to see how it compares to the other one I created. Yeah, okay. That's nice. It's amazing how, even in these low light conditions, the sensor can pick out so much saturation and detail. Okay, now that we're done with that, let's go ahead and press on to the next location. Now, it wouldn't be right to come out on a day like this where it's nice and overcast and not do any waterfalls. I love photographing waterfalls, and this is a prime location for them. So let's go ahead and I will show you one of my favorite waterfalls here. Okay, now we're at our last location. This is one of my most favorite waterfalls here. It's by far not the only waterfall. There are others here, but this is my favorite, mainly because of the character of it. It has some beautiful little cascades coming down, so there isn't any water bunched up in one location where you would maybe risk the highlights burning out. It's not a huge waterfall, but size isn't always important in this case. It's the character. It has a lot of character. Now, rather than photographing this straight on, I've come off to one side of the waterfall just to create a little bit more of a dynamic shape to this. So you can see down here, it's creating this nice little S shape in the foreground. I quite like that, so I want to include that. And I don't want to go too high, so I'm including those white areas up in the forest. So I'm cropping that just a little over the top of the waterfall, giving it plenty of room. So let's go ahead and, now I'm shooting at 400 ISO. The light levels are dropping quite a bit. Let's go ahead, this is F11, about 13 seconds. I could increase the ISO if I want to shorten that time exposure, but let's just see how this looks. Okay, the highlights look okay. It's not burning out, so I've got plenty of detail in those, so I'm really happy with that. Just for argument's sake, I'm going to go ahead and put this up to about 800 ISO. Now, I would never photograph at high ISOs in a forest woodland like this. But the nice thing is, when you do so, you don't really see the noise so much because you don't have any fine like skies in your shot where you're going to see that noise. And I can always take out that noise later in topaz denoise anyway. Yep, that looks wonderful. I'm really happy with that. So I hope you've enjoyed coming out with me on this beautiful day. Well, not really a beautiful day. It's a bit dark and dank, but it proves a point. It just goes to show you what sort of images you can actually create on a dull, even a rainy day, when you photograph waterfalls and forests and little details, leaves on the floor. So there's a lot you can do, even in lousy conditions. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. That really helps us to bring you more content in the future. Hit those like buttons and be sure to stick around to the end of this to see the images that I've created on today and during the workshop. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.